Meghan is livid. Harry has met someone who is his age, with whom he is in love, and who is in love with him.
Harry is in love with another woman of his age who is also in love with him.
Now, you have stopped short, Lady C, of saying that Harry is having an affair.
Yes.
I tried so hard.
Harry may allegedly reportedly have another woman who Harry is quote unquote in love with, and who is quote unquote in love with Harry.
Meghan reportedly came across the messages on Harry's phone herself, and what happened next has people talking. Some online commentators say it says a lot about what this marriage may look like.
There is another woman in the photo and not in the picture. And not only that, I'm so excited, my words are tumbling out. Not only that, Meghan discovered this affair by discovering text messages on his phone. Do we know when?
But according to the way this story is being discussed online, that alleged affair is not even the biggest point here. Before this video wraps up, you are supposed to hear something that some viewers say the mainstream media tends to avoid touching. It has to do with those young people.
If Meghan had no womb, how was she able to produce 2 children? And also, how was she able to get pregnant between the births of Archie and Lily?
Lady Colin Campbell has written 7 unauthorized books about the British royal family, and she has spent decades around insider circles. She is also someone who, according to public discussion, has faced legal pressure more times than most people can count, yet she still keeps speaking out. That alone says a lot about the energy around her commentary. Before she even got into anything about Harry, she reportedly made it clear with a sharp line, saying, "You cannot sue me." And that kind of line immediately raised the stakes, because it suggested she was not trying to soften her comments for anyone. In online discussions, people took that as a sign that she was prepared to keep pushing into territory others might avoid. That is part of why her remarks keep drawing so much attention, since viewers are not just reacting to the claim itself, but also to the way she frames it. From there, the conversation naturally shifts into the bigger issue, the one people say gets overlooked when the focus stays only on Harry.
Are you concerned, Lady C, about the potential for Prince Harry to sue you in a British court?
He can't sue me. You can't sue for somebody for saying that you're in love with someone else and that they're in love with you. There's no crime in being in love with someone, irrespective of your marital status.
Just think about what that really suggests. In the way this is being discussed, she appears to have considered the legal risk, looked at the kinds of responses Harry and Meghan are known online for using against people who cross them, and decided the point she was making was careful enough to stand on its own. Under British law, accusing a married person of having a sexual affair can potentially raise defamation concerns, so she kept her wording measured. She described 2 healthy adults in their 40s who are in love, and that choice of language was clearly intentional.
If you accuse somebody who is married of having a sexual affair outside of their marriage, that can be regarded as defamatory. The old standard of the person on the London omnibus kicks in terms of the reputation in terms of anything sexual.
What do adults in love do? She asked. Talk about Kant and Schopenhauer? She smiled and added, "Someone bring the champagne." Then she pointed to the sourcing, saying it was on a U.S. government level, with references tied to the Liberal Democrats. She also stressed that it was verifiable and checked, and that the people who came to her had approached her completely unsolicited. According to that framing, they reportedly chose her because they knew she would verify every single detail before saying a word publicly.
I am saying that 2 healthy, vigorous 40-something-year-olds in love would never resort to carnality. Oh no, of course not. They would stay on the highest planes of philosophy, discussing the relative merits of Kant versus Schopenhauer. And I think you can draw your own conclusions as to where I'm I'm coming from when I say something like that, because because this is the United Kingdom, for legal reasons.
Harry has reportedly been meeting someone around his own age, and online chatter says the connection is being talked about as mutual. According to the version being discussed, she is said to have strong feelings for him, and he is said to feel the same way about her. Meghan allegedly learned about it after seeing texts on his phone, and then came the part that changes the whole tone of the story. Nobody really knows how long this has allegedly been going on. And that is exactly why people keep circling back to it. The story is not just about what was allegedly discovered, it is about the way the whole thing is being framed online, with some viewers saying the careful wording matters just as much as the claim itself. When a conversation like this starts moving through social media, every small detail gets picked apart, especially when legal caution and public image are both part of the backdrop. That is also why the reaction has stayed so intense. Commentators are not only focused on the relationship angle, they are also watching how the public narrative is being shaped, step by step. In that kind of climate, even a restrained comment can spark a bigger debate, because people begin questioning what was said, what was implied, and what still remains unverified. And from here, the discussion only gets more layered as the attention shifts to what this could mean for the people involved.
Prince Harry, by your very well-sourced report, has fallen in love with another woman.
Yes.
Please spill.
Isn't it fun? And
it's incredible.
I tell you, Maureen, it absolutely dropped in my lap, because
Really?
somebody, they are connected officially on state level in America. So I've sworn to secrecy, but they are very well connected. I didn't know them from Adam.
Now here is the word that stopped everything cold. Just one word. Meghan's reaction when she found those texts was described as livid. Not heartbroken, not devastated, not even disconsolate, but livid. Grief and anger are not the same thing, and that distinction is exactly what people keep debating. If a wife discovers her husband may have feelings for someone else, some would read that as grief. But if someone feels a connection has slipped outside their reach, others say the reaction can look more like fury. According to her side of the story, Meghan was said to be livid, but still not ready to walk away from the brand, including Harry's connection to the king. Read that again. In the way online commentators are framing it, that does not sound like a woman simply losing a marriage. It sounds, at least to critics, like someone watching a carefully built arrangement come under pressure.
He's fallen in love with her. They have been seen out and about, and he's in love with her, and she's in love with him, supposedly. So,
Now, you have stopped short, Lady C, of saying that Harry is having an affair.
yes, because under British law, if to do that would open me up to the possibility of libel.
According to the way some online commentators are framing it, the anger was never really about love. It was about leverage. Think back to the Oprah interview, with Harry holding her hand across those garden chairs in front of 49 million viewers, saying she was his person. Keep that image in mind, then place the word livid right beside it. To a lot of people, something about that contrast never quite lined up, and that is exactly why the conversation keeps circling back to it.
Meghan is livid, but I'm going to quote, but not enough to give up on her brand, which includes Harry's connection to the king, nor is Harry about to leave his children, whom he loves dearly.
Most people had already picked up on that long before Lady C said anything, but there is still one question nobody can really answer. No one knows how long Harry has supposedly known this woman, and that one missing detail completely shifts the way people are reading the past 12 months. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps pulling people back in. When one key detail is missing, the whole story can start to look very different depending on who is telling it and who is reading it. Some viewers think that is the real reason this topic keeps spreading, because the public is not just reacting to the relationship angle, they are reacting to the gaps, the wording, and the silence around what has not been confirmed. That is why every new remark gets examined so closely. A single phrase can make the online conversation shift from sympathy to skepticism in seconds, and once that happens, people start reading old moments in a completely new light. In a situation like this, the reaction often becomes part of the story itself, with critics, supporters, and casual observers all pulling in different directions. And as long as there are unanswered questions, the discussion is likely to stay active rather than settle down.
People have seen them together. Oh dear, my goodness, Harry's growing. Is it a backbone? Or, my goodness, maybe he's not going to be able to juggle those balls outside of windows anymore, because maybe they're going to be attached instead of detached. That would be progress, wouldn't it?
If people want to judge whether a marriage is really under strain, some argue you should look past the statements and check the calendar instead. Geneva on her own, Chicago on her own, a museum gala on her own, a young person's hospital fundraiser on her own, a charity dinner on her own, the red carpet on her own, and even the Tyler Perry tribute on her own. That is more than 40 days without a single shared public appearance.
And I tell you, I didn't invite it. It came to me totally unexpectedly, and it came through very, very reputable, provable, liberal Democrat sources in the United States, which also tells me that Harry and Meghan have blotted their copy within the Democrat Party in the United States.
A couple who once sat across from Oprah Winfrey and told the world they were inseparable. That is the image people keep coming back to. 40 days later, the contrast is what has viewers talking. Meanwhile, Harry keeps heading back to Britain without Meghan and without the young ones, even though he previously said in public that the country felt too dangerous for his family. Each time he returns, observers say the same thing. He seems lighter, more relaxed, and a lot more like the man people remember from before all of this began.
Back when Harry was madly in love with Meghan, he would allow himself to be led around by her. The implication being, the generous interpretation, Harry is no longer madly in love. My interpretation is he's no longer in love with her. The scales have fallen from his eyes. And then you drop this bombshell that there is another woman in the photo and not in the picture.
Now add the mystery woman into that picture. According to online chatter, she is said to live in or near Montecito, has her own money, and moves comfortably in circles of influence without needing that world to define her. Some viewers believe she understands Harry's environment without being pulled into it. People say they have been seen together, and so far they appear to have stayed out of the cameras, with no one really knowing how long it has been going on. And that is exactly why the conversation is not fading anytime soon. Once people start comparing public appearances, travel patterns, and the little gaps in what has been said, every detail begins to feel loaded. Supporters may see a simple explanation, while critics and casual observers read it as a sign that something deeper might be going on, even though none of that has been officially confirmed. What makes it even harder to ignore is how quickly online discussion can reshape the whole picture. One day the focus is on the relationship, the next it is on the timing, the silence, and who was seen where. That kind of speculation can spread fast, especially when there is no clear statement to settle the matter. So instead of the story cooling off, it keeps circling back with even more questions, and people keep digging for meaning in every new detail.
And I'm not going to say if it's actually in Montecito or near Montecito, but it's in the environs, let's put it that way. People have seen them together. Oh dear. My goodness, Harry's growing.
Every solo trip, every empty seat beside Meghan, every photo where one of them is seen in a different place, all of it takes on a very different meaning now. And then there was chatter online that a vow renewal might have been quietly suggested to help smooth over the cracks. If that discussion is even partly true, it says a lot about the mood around the marriage, because people usually talk about renewing vows when questions about the original promises are already out in the open.
Not only that, this all tracks because we don't know how long this has been going on for. The reporting from you is that the quote unquote other woman is somebody Harry's age. She is age appropriate in and around the environs of Montecito, which means probably of money, some power, discretion, understands all of that.
This does not look like a couple simply guarding their privacy. It looks more like a team trying to manage a serious perception issue. Separate Instagram accounts, separate Netflix projects, separate brands, and separate social media identities built around very different narratives. Plenty of people politely called it a modern setup, even a mature one, but it is hard to ignore how much of their public life has been kept apart if the bond is still supposed to be as close as ever. According to online discussion, these separate lives did not start with one message or one moment. Some people speculated they started with a spreadsheet and a business plan. And once people begin looking at it through that lens, it is the kind of idea that is difficult to unsee.
Harry and Meghan have blotted their copy within the Democrat Party in the United States, because this is something that, why was I chosen to be told? I know I was chosen to be told because they knew that I would be able to check them out and I would go with it if once I found out that they were genuine sources. But these are people who have witnessed what's going on.
Paris Fashion Week, late at night, Meghan was seen in the back of a car with her feet up, filming her shoes and posting the moment to Instagram like a polished little travel diary clip. According to the route being discussed online, the car passed within about a mile of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. And a lot of people watching still remember exactly where they were on August 31st, 1997. They remember the flowers building up outside Kensington Palace, and they remember seeing a 12-year-old young person walk behind their mother's coffin in front of the whole world. That image left a mark that has never fully gone away. That is why the reaction has stayed so intense, because people are not just discussing one post or one appearance, they are tying together an entire timeline and trying to read between the lines. Online, even small details start getting treated like clues, and once that happens, the conversation gets a life of its own. For supporters, it still looks like a private couple under constant pressure from public attention. For critics, it looks like a carefully managed image that does not always match the way things are presented. Neither side has official proof for the bigger claims being thrown around, but that has not stopped the speculation from spreading. And when a story reaches that point, every new sighting, every silence, and every carefully chosen public moment gets pulled back into the same debate. That is exactly why this is not fading, because the internet keeps connecting the dots, whether those dots truly belong together or not.
This is her in the car videoing herself with her legs up as she went past the tunnel in which Diana Spencer was so tragically killed in Paris.
This is gross and grim and deranged on every level.
Harry has spoken publicly many times about what that tunnel means to him. For him, any story involving cars, photographers, and Paris at night can hit a very raw nerve, because he was only 12 years old when she passed away. In a very real way, some people say that part of him never fully left that age when it comes to that place. That wound never really closed, and many believe it never will. So when Meghan was seen with her feet up, filming her shoes and posting the moment like a stylish little night out clip, the reaction online was immediate. Her team said she did not realize where she was, but that explanation did not stop the discussion.
Well, how about having some thought towards your husband's feelings when you're in the same city his mom died in, running around, having a joyride in Paris near where she lost her life?
People who travel at Meghan's level usually do not move without advanced planning. Routes are mapped out, locations are checked, and the surrounding context is always taken into account. That is basic protocol for someone with that kind of public visibility. So the question online was not simply whether she knew, it was how no one in her wider professional circle seemed to flag it before she pressed record. After the footage spread, multiple commentators independently reached for the same word, and that reaction alone showed how strongly people felt about it. Some viewers used the term sociopathic, while others pushed back on that kind of language, saying the whole moment should be discussed as a public misstep rather than a confirmed statement about anyone's character.
especially when he's on the BBC saying that it's not safe enough for my family in the UK, but it's safe enough for Meghan to be alone in Paris, literally engaging with the paparazzi you say killed your mother.
Now people are putting that image right beside what happened at Highgrove. Harry reportedly went in to see King Charles first, and he went alone. After that, the young people were received. And only then, last of all, Meghan was allowed in. For anyone familiar with how the palace usually works, that kind of sequencing does not look random. Online commentators have taken it as more than a simple scheduling detail, and many say it sends a message without anyone having to say a word publicly. That is what keeps this whole conversation moving, because once people decide a moment says something deeper, they start treating every detail like part of a bigger pattern. A simple public appearance stops being simple, and even a quiet pause can get read as a statement. Online discussions have made that clear, with some viewers focusing less on the exact facts and more on what they believe the sequence suggests. Others are reminding people that public schedules, security concerns, and family dynamics are rarely as simple as they look from the outside. Still, the reaction shows how quickly one controversial clip can get folded into a much larger story. And that is why the debate is not really about one isolated moment anymore. It has become about image, timing, and how public figures are judged when private tensions are already part of the conversation. Once that happens, people stop looking at the scene on its own and start reading it through everything they think they already know.
As King Charles has officially met Meghan, Harry, Archie and Lily at Highgrove House, his Gloucestershire country residence.
It is. At the heart of it, it's grandparents meets and reunited with his grandchildren. That's the initial thing that you have to look at, the human element of it.
The king reportedly received his son, then his grandchildren, while Meghan, the woman who had long spoken publicly about feeling mistreated by the palace, was said to have waited outside a closed door. That account did not come from Harry or Meghan themselves. According to royal insiders and people familiar with the timeline, it was passed along by sources close to the family who were aware of what was unfolding in real time, and the details quickly spread online. Meghan was also reportedly said to have arrived with a list of requests. But by the time the meeting ended, she was left standing in a corridor while the conversation she may have hoped to shape took place without her. Some viewers saw that as more than an awkward delay. In online discussion, many treated it as a clear signal, even if the exact meaning remains open to interpretation.
It's been a never-ending soap opera to get to this stage. Will Meghan come over? Where were they staying? All that. Will she appear at any of the events that he was scheduled to go to? And then, of course, the court case, which went so horribly wrong for Harry, has added to the... and Meghan, as a result, probably deciding to keep a back seat on all things, including yesterday.
A lot of coverage around this story keeps framing Harry as someone who simply lost his footing, like a man with good intentions who got carried into situations he never really meant to be part of. But that does not feel like the full picture, and online discussions have been pushing back on that softer version of events. The instinct that there is more going on here has been there for a reason. Harry is not being discussed online as a passive bystander, but as an active participant, a grown man who made public choices again and again. He reportedly signed the Netflix deals, sat for the Oprah interview, and wrote the memoir that laid out deeply personal family details for a worldwide audience. Those were his decisions, one by one, and nothing about that appears to have been forced. And according to critics, the pattern did not start in California. It goes back even further.
But they have been making appearances separately for quite some time. I believe it was last year when Meghan and Harry announced they were separating professionally, that their brands were parting ways. And I thought to myself back then, this is the precursor. This is the precursor to an actual emotional marital separation.
Chelsea Davy was part of Harry's life for 7 years on and off. And Harry has testified under oath that relentless media intrusion helped break that relationship down. There may be truth in that account, but people who followed the romance closely at the time have been pointing to another side of the story as well. According to those discussions, Harry was not always faithful to Chelsea. Some have alleged he was involved with other women while they were together, which reportedly upset her, and in the end, she is said to have walked away. And that is exactly why the conversation keeps circling back to Harry himself, because once people start revisiting his past relationships, the internet tends to connect those dots in every direction. Some commentators say the issue is not just what happened in one relationship, but the broader image he has built over time, especially when public choices and private loyalty become part of the same conversation. That is where the reaction gets more complicated. Online, some viewers are not treating him as someone who simply got pulled along by circumstance. They are pointing to the fact that he has repeatedly stepped into highly visible situations, and critics argue that those choices made him a central part of the story, not just someone standing beside it. Of course, others push back on that reading and say public pressure can distort how these relationships are remembered. Still, the speculation keeps growing because people think the earlier breakup story adds another layer to everything that followed. Whether or not every detail is viewed the same way, the online discussion clearly shows that many people believe the pattern matters more than any single headline.
Yeah, he loved her a lot, and she really loved him, and they had great fun together, and he liked it because she wasn't worried about the royal family. That wasn't a big deal for her. She just fitted in very easily.
That, according to people close to the situation, was said to be entirely his own doing. Not the tabloids, not the palace, but his choice.
So he started having affairs with all sorts of other girls, and she got very upset, and he didn't go and see her for a long time, so she went off and left him. Now, that's his fault, 100% his fault.
Then, according to online discussion, Cressida Bonus saw what had happened with Chelsea, looked ahead at where things might go if she stayed, and chose to walk away before the same pattern could repeat. Two women, both of whom seemed to care about him, and both left, people say, because of who he appeared to be when the cameras were off. You watched him serve in Afghanistan. You watched him build Invictus and felt something real in what he created for wounded veterans.
Prince Harry is heartbroken all over again. Now, of course, this is something that he is never going to admit publicly, especially as his marriage to Meghan Markle crumbled.
That version of Harry was real, but this one is too. Acting like one cancels out the other is exactly the kind of thinking that has, in the eyes of critics, let him avoid real accountability for years. He did not simply fall into this situation. According to some online commentary, he helped build it step by step. And if the information coming next is accurate, then some viewers believe he was right there while something far more consequential was taking shape alongside it. And that is why the reaction has not really tragic passing down. Because once people start questioning the bigger picture, every old story suddenly feels connected. Online, critics are not just talking about one breakup or one message, they are debating the image Harry has carried for years and whether that image matched what was happening behind the scenes. That is also why the discussion keeps spreading, since viewers are reading his past choices as part of a much larger pattern. Some people insist the public only ever saw the polished version, while others argue the criticism goes too far and ignores how complicated these relationships can be. Either way, the conversation is no longer just about a private situation. It has turned into a wider debate about judgment, loyalty, and what people think they were seeing all along.
Well, the reality is that the whole thing has been unsustainable. I mean, this degree of malice and toxicity and destructiveness could not have continued at the rate it was going. And what I found interesting was on the back of all of this information that I got from these very well-placed political people in America, and ironically enough, they are liberal. They're not right-wingers. They are liberal, which...
Meghan was not just absent from the recent Invictus events. According to this version of the story, she was reportedly not invited. The organization Harry founded, the one centered on wounded veterans from around the world and the cause that has moved even hardened journalists, was said to have made it clear she could not attend. Lady C's sources went even further, claiming that some Invictus organizers were said to be disturbed by Harry's recent behavior, especially his podcast language and the blunt tone of it. In their view, there was a stark gap between the dignity Invictus represents and the way Harry chose to present himself publicly.
The king was prepared to receive Meghan and Harry and the children. Now, Do you remember the other day I was saying that things were brewing and that there was a very good reason for the king to receive Harry and Meghan and the children?
The one thing people across the board had long seen as Harry's genuinely positive move has now, in online discussion, become something many viewers say they are shocked by when it comes to both of them. That is no small shift. To critics, it feels like the last solid point in his favor may have started to fall apart. And then there is that cooking show, the one almost nobody seemed to watch.
I have just seen on another YouTuber's channel that Meg the Baby's horrible, boring cooking show on Netflix just got nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award. Can you explain how a show that was rated so low on the totem pole of Netflix shows received a nomination? As usual, everything the Harkles do or are involved with is so shady. This needs to be questioned.
Lady C described it, and I am quoting her exactly, as something wonderful for people who have trouble sleeping. That show even picked up a Daytime Emmy nomination. Lady C said a Hollywood contact confirmed the way it happened, and according to her version, Ted Sarandos had publicly backed Meghan when she first came to Netflix. But the show itself, by that account, did not perform well at all. So, to avoid the professional embarrassment of standing behind such a high-profile and expensive disappointment, they allegedly worked to get her a nomination. And, according to that discussion, this kind of thing is just standard in Hollywood. The claim was that anyone can nominate their own show. That is why people online keep circling back to the same question, whether the image being sold to the public ever matched the reality behind it. For some viewers, the Emmy talk only made the whole situation look even more awkward, because it added another layer to an already messy public conversation. Others push back and say the reaction is getting blown out of proportion, especially when so much of it is still based on commentary, not confirmed facts. Still, the reason the story keeps moving is pretty clear. Once a project gets attention for the wrong reasons, every part of the rollout starts getting picked apart, from who supported it to how it was presented to the public. And in this case, critics are treating the nomination chatter as another example of how fast online perception can shift when a celebrity image starts cracking under pressure.
To spare Ted Sarandos the embarrassment of having affiliated himself with a loser like Meghan, they have moved heaven and earth to get it nominated for an Emmy. I actually checked this out with a Hollywood friend of mine. So it's not a bongo drum situation, I suppose you could say. It's just a straightforward checkout. And it's standard fare in Hollywood. That's how they work.
The bigger question is whether anyone actually votes for it. Compare that with William and Catherine, who have 2 Primetime Emmy nominations for real content with real viewership, according to the conversation online and praise from supporters. No behind-the-scenes talk needed, some viewers would say. The difference speaks for itself, critics argue. But even with the ban, the Emmy chatter, and the texts on Harry's phone, none of that is actually the story you have been waiting for since the beginning of this video.
Anything is possible in Hollywood. We see the most grotesque performances on a daily basis and have seen them in the last year or two in full display of the rest of the world. Small example, Ted Sarandos saying that Meghan was very influential and blah, 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 at a time that everybody else knew that they were getting at least half the board, to be polite about it all. And Netflix was trying to get rid of her.
At the start, I mentioned that Lady C's sources gave her 2 separate pieces of information. You have already heard the first one. Now comes the second. And this is the part the mainstream media seems to avoid touching at all. The same sources that told Lady C about Harry's new partner also allegedly shared something far bigger, something that goes beyond a difficult marriage and reaches right into the center of the British monarchy itself. According to that version of events, Lilibet was said by some online commentators to have been carried and delivered by a surrogate from Colorado, then flown to Montecito by private jet, with the arrangement supposedly planned from the beginning and NDAs said to have been signed by everyone who was present.
Lily was born to a surrogate in Colorado and flown by private jet to California for the handover, so it wasn't the Stork or FedEx. And those people are liberals with impeccable, traceable identities who espouse many of the sympathies which Harry and Meghan grandstand about so hypocritically. You know, these pseudos have been seen through to such an extent that even people who might once have been supporters are now eager to bring their dog and pony show to an end.
Lady C was very clear about this, and for legal reasons, she is not presenting it as a confirmed matter of fact. Instead, she says she is repeating what supposedly came from verified, traceable Liberal Democrat government sources that she claims were shared with her directly. People she says she has raised questions about are real, with official roles and real accountability, and, in her view, with no reason to invent any of it. Then there is Thomas Markle Jr., who has publicly said that Trevor, Meghan's first husband, told him Meghan had undergone a hysterectomy. Meghan has not publicly denied that claim, and Trevor Engelson has also never issued a public denial, at least not one that has been made public. That silence is exactly why people online keep treating the topic as unfinished and still open to interpretation. And that is exactly why the discussion keeps refusing to die online. Once a topic gets pulled into public debate, every silence, every missing denial, and every carefully worded statement starts getting treated like part of the story. Some viewers see that as proof that the public has been left to piece together too much on its own, while others argue it is all still too speculative to treat as settled. Either way, the reaction says a lot about how fast the conversation shifts when celebrity rumor collides with royal scrutiny. What began as a private family matter, at least in the way people are discussing it, has now turned into a much bigger debate about image, trust, and what the public thinks it is being shown. And because none of the more serious claims have been publicly confirmed, the whole thing stays in that uneasy space where commentary, suspicion, and denial all keep overlapping.
According to Thomas Markle Jr., Trevor told him that Meghan had a hysterectomy. Meghan has never denied it. Trevor Engelson has never denied it. I would not expect Thomas Markle Sr. to confirm it because, as you know, he's a decent man and he loves his daughter. And no matter what has happened, he's not going to be disloyal to his daughter the way his daughter has been to him.
If that version is accurate and nobody has publicly stepped in to say otherwise, one very obvious question comes next. If Meghan had a hysterectomy, how exactly did she carry 2 children? And that is where people start pointing back to the twerking video. It was set in a hospital environment with what viewers believed was a 9-month pregnant belly, and Lady C's sources described it as completely staged, a setup from start to finish. Women who said they had actually been 9 months pregnant watched that clip and reacted in huge numbers with the same basic point. They said the body simply does not move that way at full term. The center of gravity alone changes everything, and those movements would be extremely hard to reconcile with what a full-term pregnancy usually looks like. That is not just a matter of opinion, it is why so many viewers felt the footage did not match the way a pregnant body would normally behave.
And Meghan and Harry, may I point out, have actually addressed this issue. They addressed it in their Netflix series when to prove that she gave birth to Archie. They aired a clip of a scan of a fetus with all of the identifying features removed.
In the Netflix documentary, they also included what looked like ultrasound footage, but every identifying detail had been removed. That choice raises obvious questions. If it was truly a scan of your own young person, why would the most recognizable markers be taken out? To a lot of viewers, that does not read like proof. It looks more like something designed to suggest proof, while making sure nothing on screen could actually verify anything. And this is where the story goes far beyond ordinary family drama. Both Archie and Lilibet are in the line of succession to the British throne. One comment that picked up nearly 2,000 likes across videos about this story said what many people seem to be thinking: nobody is really focused on the affair talk. They want answers about the young people. That is not just celebrity chatter. People online are framing it as a constitutional question, and so far, no one in an official position has publicly answered it.
Why would, if it were a scan of Archie, why were all of the identifying features removed? It's all of these sort of crazy, anomalous head games. One could almost say mad claims.
California is a community property state, and that detail matters a lot once a marriage starts nearing the 10-year mark. For Harry and Meghan, that timeline could change the shape of any divorce settlement in a major way. But even more important, if there were ever a custody dispute involving two young people with royal titles and a grandfather who is the reigning king, lawyers would start asking for documents, records, and proof of origin very quickly. All the questions that have been floating around in comment sections for years would suddenly have to be tested in court, and courtrooms do not treat NDAs as a substitute for real answers. According to Lady C, that is part of why the mainstream media tends to stay quiet. She said they worry about losing palace access, and they also worry about legal exposure. So instead, they wait for some kind of resolution before they report the full story. But when U.S. government-level sources, described as traceable Liberal Democrat officials with real positions, are said to have contacted a British biographer about what is happening inside that Montecito home, the situation already looks very different. NDAs cannot be used to silence serious allegations forever, at least not in the way people online are discussing it. The real question was always who would speak first, and now, according to this narrative, someone supposedly has. That is why the conversation keeps stretching beyond one rumor or one clip, because people are no longer reacting to the surface story alone. They are looking at the gaps, the edits, the silence around certain details, and the way each new discussion seems to raise even more questions than it answers. For supporters, that kind of reaction feels unfair and overly speculative. For critics, it is exactly the lack of clear, direct explanation that keeps the debate alive online. Once a story reaches that point, every detail gets pulled into a larger argument about credibility, transparency, and who gets to control the narrative. Some viewers say the public would never be this invested if the story had been addressed plainly from the start, while others point out that online audiences often turn uncertainty into certainty far too quickly. Either way, the issue has moved well past casual celebrity gossip, and that is what makes the tension so persistent. The more people discuss it, the more they treat each small piece of footage, every public silence, and every reported statement as if it carries hidden meaning. Whether those interpretations are fair or not, they have clearly shaped how this story is being received, and that alone has kept the speculation circulating.
But if you actually listen very carefully, I don't think they actually said that Lily was born in California. They didn't necessarily say, and I just picked this up while listening to your thing, actually. I'm not sure that they said that Lily was necessarily born in Colorado so much as that she was born to, I think she might have been born to Colorado mother and transported.
You watched a 12-year-old boy walk behind his mother's coffin. Most people remember exactly where they were that morning. You watched that boy grow up into a soldier. You watched him build Invictus. You watched him carry a warmth through everything, something palace machinery could never really manufacture. And then you watched him make one choice after another that brought him here, to a house in California that, to many observers, does not seem to feel like home, to a marriage, described by those close to it, with one word, livid, to children whose origins are now tied to claims from U.S. government sources that no one in authority has publicly addressed, to a woman nearby who, some say, may make him feel something real for the first time in years. His father found comfort outside a strained marriage. His mother paid the ultimate price for the public life she was forced to carry. And Harry, the boy who seemed determined to write a completely different story from his parents, may have ended up living a version of that same story, just in a different time zone and under different cameras. If this story around the children and the unanswered questions made you stop and think, like, subscribe, share, and comment, and I'll see you on the next one.